Welcome to Cut the Bull, an insightful podcast which addresses the news of the day and the cultural issues plaguing our society, bringing logic and context to these topics and discussing solutions too real for mainstream pundits. Now, here are your hosts, Charles Love and Wilfred Riley.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love, alongside my co-host Wilfred Riley. And we're just chatting along this week because apparently, Christy, I don't know if you know this, Will, but Christy and Lou are off doing things in the real world, and they happen to be in the same place. So they might have gotten a chance to meet each other in person. They're in Vegas at a conference, and they were like, yeah, I'm at the same conference. So we wish them well. And, we've been told that on occasion we should do this anyway. So I guess this is one of those times. And before I get into all kind of topics, as you see alongside my book is your most recent book. You have it there behind you.
Thank you.
How's it going? How the sales going? How the conversation's going? I peek every once in a while. I see you still up in the constant flow of sales category, which is good. So how's that going?
They're going pretty well. I mean, so like I have it up on Amazon right now. We've sold a couple thousand in the past month. Definitely the book is right now, it dropped a little bit. It's number 4 in historical study, number like 6,000 globally, but it's doing pretty well. It's selling quite a bit. And I think we've got a bunch more media that's going to drop pretty soon. So like I did a John Stossel appearance. I did I have a trigonometry appearance that's coming up at some point in the near future. So yeah, it's going pretty well.
That's good. That's good.
Decent.
When I told you I looked recently, when I was looking, I went to the comments. I like to see what people are saying and try to filter by the lowest comments. And some people are just haters because the 1s and 2s had no comments. They didn't leave a comment. They just marked it 1. One person complained about the book being damaged. I don't know why you knocked the author because Amazon shipped a damaged book.
That's weird.
And then of course there was the gaslighting. No one teaches this stuff, which is fun. Nobody says any of these things, right? You're making it up by saying that. I mean, I'm assuming they also disagree with your arguments, but they say bigger than that is you're making it up. No liberal teachers say it. Nobody says Native Americans of this. Nobody says all this kind of stuff, which is crazy. So I'm glad it's doing well. And I want to segue to, as you all can see, I have a hard copy here that my man sent me and signed. And in it, you talked about coming to the board meeting one time. You if you want to bring your popcorn and come, you will be entertained. So this month's meeting was yesterday. And it was the first of the year, so we elect officers and that kind of thing. So it was pretty calm. Everybody's kicking off like a new year. Let's get along. Let's be kind. The activists had flyers. They came back. But they were all kind of muted at the beginning. It still ended up in security being called and all the kind of madness that it normally does. But it was normal for a while until we get the public speaking. They still speak about the same topic. They're allowed to speak. And then the resolutions were pretty vanilla. So that wasn't an issue. So 2 issues came up. One was the one that caused all the ruckus was they started chanting repeal 248 again, which is the resolution they don't like. That's not going anywhere if you all don't remember. And so we go through, we're humming along quickly. Any new business? One of the council members said, yes. Okay, what's your new business? I would like to make a motion on the floor to have a vote on resolution 259. There was no 259. We only had 257 and 258. And 250, well, we're like, what is 259? 259 is to reinstate the resolution from last month that got voted down to rescind 248 from 4 months ago. You can't do that. Right, it's against the bylaws.
Parliamentary trickery, yeah.
Right, you have to post it in advance. People have to say, and then all hell broke loose. The audience started cheering. Change the rules. You can set a precedent. All this other kind of nonsense. They're yelling at each other, and it went crazy. That was one, and it's a stunt because they know it can't pass. The second thing was they're all talking whatever. And as I told you several months ago, I said that they had attacked me and Maud about going to a Moms for Liberty event, and I said, we do a podcast. I did a radio show in Salem. I've written, 3 books and lots of articles. If you can find anything that I said that was hateful, I will give you $100. So 6 months later, took them 6 months to come over. one person spoke that, Charles, you said this a few months ago, and I'd like to know where to send my receipt. I was like, oh, so I tried to get her attention to talk afterwards. She didn't come up. So I went to one of her friends and said, yeah, she said that, but she left. I would love to see this evidence. Oh, we have zillions of things. I said, zillions? I said, well, we have lots. I'll bring up one right now. So go to a video. When I see the video, I know where it's from and I know it's BS. It's from the Moms for Liberty event. And a parent asked a question about, you all want to do all this nonsense and change the way we teach kids. You have the right to do what you want to do with your kids, but why don't you leave our kids alone and just teach what you want to teach your kids at home and let us do what we want to do in school? So my reply was, but you're gaslighting us because you're doing the opposite, right? So what you're saying is, and I said, if your child identifies as another gender or as LGBT, whatever the case may be, they should be respected. They shouldn't be bullied in the school. That's a given. What I'm saying is that that does not mean that every other kid's education has to change to make your child comfortable. So you don't change the curriculum to say, okay, Lisa is in the class and Lisa's trans. So now we need to change the curriculum to teach kids about trans and about their lifestyle, because that's not part of the curriculum, and definitely not do it for 6-year-olds because that's inappropriate to just walk into the class and say, okay, today we're going to teach that you can change your gender, and change it back. You can identify as X, all this other kind of stuff. Why would that be in the curriculum? That was their evidence of me being hateful. I said, what's hateful about it? They said, well, do you teach kids to be boys and girls? I'm like, well, actually, you don't. You don't teach. It's not a like part of the lesson plan. But you don't come in today and today we're going to teach you what boys do and what girls do. That's not part of the lesson plan. So no, I don't do that, and I wouldn't want anybody to do that. So that was their 6 months research, their evidence that I'm hateful. So no, gays aren't people. No trans. There's no such thing as trans. I didn't say any of that stuff. No, ban them from anything. Just because I said you shouldn't teach this as a mandate to all children. You deal with it when the situation comes up, but you don't take every 6-year-old and say, let me explain to you about this gender ideology, and that's what they want. So because I disagree with them, I'm hateful. So that was what happened at yesterday's meeting.
Yeah, hateful to these people pretty much just means disagreeing with them. Like, I actually think that if you look through my record, you could probably find things that they would consider genuinely hateful, like, you can't change your sex and all these people are just mentally ill or something like that. But I mean, I know you've always had a pretty calm perspective on a lot of this stuff. So no, I'm not surprised by that. It's, to me, like, this entire situation is deeply bizarre and is evidence of sort of the almost feminized insanity that's widely tolerated because people want to be empathic and nice. I mean, like, the people in your school board meetings are parents who are demanding the right to tell their kids they're the sex that they're not, give them these life-changing drugs, and then have them do things like change with members of the opposite sex. So hopefully the school board kind of stands up there and says, no, this is nuts. Is Maud still off the board?
Yeah, she's still off. There's still machinations about what's going to happen. There's still court appearances. I mean, we're far away from replacing her, because the process is there's a DOE group called FACE. So all the applications go to them. They vet them to make sure that you're a parent, that you're this, you're that. And then they send them to us and we go through them and say, who do we want to interview? And then we interview at a meeting, and we don't have to have a special meeting. So think about the time that would take. So by next month, if they don't have any applications, we go another month. And they're concerned that because there's so much contention about our specific council, that the chancellor may try to force someone on, because it does say he has the ability after 90 days to fill it. But it would seem, even he's not that bad. It would seem political, because there are councils that have had empty seats for the entire year we've been on, 13 months. No, they have one that doesn't have a president, because they're short 2 people, and this doesn't leave enough people to get the 7 people they need to vote to pass it.
That's wild.
So they were allowed to go 13 months, but they just go 2 months in and force it. It would seem kind of odd.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be obvious what was going on. So your school board or your council is representing a certain section of Manhattan, or what's the district?
2. So it is, there's 32 of them. It's crazy. Million students, though, I give you, but really not even a million, because it's only K through 8. High school has their own. So it's K through 8. And you talk about gerrymandering. District 1 is it's basically Chinatown, right? Small district, Lower Manhattan. our district is basically all of Manhattan, south of Central Park and the Upper East Side, right?
Okay.
And then the Upper West Side is one, Harlem's another one, and then you get into the Bronx and everything. But it's pretty big. It's one of the largest. It's one of the most affluent. It's fairly diverse, of course. But because you got Chinatown, you got the mix. You still have housing projects. People are shocked that there's housing projects in Manhattan, but there are. So it's a little bit. You got Billionaires Row. All the actors live in our district, except for the ones that live on the Upper West Side. But the people who live in Chelsea are in our district. Trump Tower, the Upper East Side. So it's a pretty diverse
And
area.
do all these people come to school board meetings, like bringing the nanny or whatever? And do their kids go to public school?
Some of them do if they're in certain areas. What I would say is it's just it's a little bit different. Obviously, our district, but it's kind of like most places. Very few people come to the boring, minutia of zoning and this and that. They come when they're upset about something, right? So if your kid can't get into the zone school and there's an issue, people will come and complain about that. But on a monthly basis before the takeover, not many, 20 people. I mean, now it's like 100 every month, but the average is, 15, 20. We haven't had a normal one in a while. So, people only come. It's kind of like when we get into the election stuff, I say, when we start talking about that, I'm still going to say that people tend to, the majority of people anyway, vote either more against something than they do for something. But it's either I'm a one issue voter and I'm voting for this, or I really can't stand that person, so I vote against. Or it's the same thing here. They're quiet about the school board until they're really upset, and then they want to say something. They come out. But the last thing I want to say about it is I'm really upset that I pretty much lost what all respect I've had for them, because meaning the DOE and how they run things. Because my issue is the public has a right to speak without a doubt, but that has to be organization, decorum, and things have to move forward. So the superintendent speaks at every meeting. So the superintendent for District 2 is there, and his two deputies. There's no way I would allow these meetings to go like this 7, 8, 9 months in a row, where we're not talking about anything that's beneficial to the kids, no education. They just sit there and giggle like they think this is funny or something. It's sad, right? So that's the biggest issue. I mean, I told them that, and he disagreed, but I said, you could put a stop to this, right? See, they don't want me to be president, because if I was a president, we've had to have security the last few months. I would say I would get control of the meeting or have you removed, right? You don't have the right to disrupt the meeting. You get to speak. There's two, not one, two public speaking sessions, and you can speak twice. Totally fine.
Yeah.
If you speak outside of that, you're removed, period.
Oh, totally agree. But there are people resisting that.
Oh, they're yelling. I mean, at the end of the meeting yesterday, they're yelling. They're like the president is talking to another council member, and the people in the audience are yelling, but you don't have to do that. But that's not true. But last month, I would have been like, stop talking or get removed, period. Mm-hmm. There's 8 officers in the back, and they'll be happy to come down and escort you out. But they won't do it unless the president says it.
That's wild. That's not.
I told him you need to start kicking them out every month.
Yep. No, that's obviously the thing to do. But I mean, at least you're getting entertained. You're getting some good material, some good content from these damned meetings. So
yes, I mean, that's the thing. It's recorded. The last thing about it is I forgot about that. The last argument they had was one of the council members was upset and wanted to make a motion to vote to ban council members from taking pictures or filming people in the audience. He claims that happened last time. I know he was talking about Maud. He probably was talking about me, but I didn't film anybody. I took a picture. But I would tell you, if you come to a meeting holding up signs with my name on it, like I hate Charles, love is hate, I want to take a picture of the sign. I actually asked them for the sign once, and they said, "Why do you want it?" Because you put my name on it. Right. And so
I would make that like my Facebook background, like a mob of people with like Will Riley signs. Will Riley sucks.
Right. So he was making an argument about that. Mind you, he's the most disrespectful to other people of the people on the council. But he was making that argument. But here's my thing. You can make your legal as a lawyer, your legal assessment of it, but it's just common sense to me. The meetings are public. You come down there to speak. The meetings are also recorded, right? So I know it's a public space and you don't have an expectation of privacy, but it's even better than that. When you come down, it's recorded. So you don't want me to snap, according to him, to snap a picture of somebody. Yet I can go to the page and take a snapshot of that video and post it because it's there. So you're arguing about taking a picture of people who are being recorded. Is that not the craziest argument you've ever heard?
It's just all stupid nonsense. I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking pictures of people that are showing up in a public meeting. It's just all there's got to be something that can be used against these rogue board members that think that girls don't have penises or whatever. I mean, it's just, like I don't know. It sucks because it involves kids. So like everyone involved in this is actually probably a nice enough kid. They're a little confused about gender. They want to play soccer or whatever. But nonetheless, I mean, like I would be a lot more amused by the ridiculousness of the situation than you are. And like I'm a big fan of the postmodern in general. So like the other day at my gym, I probably would have been a little more reluctant to do this if it was a woman, but there was like a group of young guys that were working out and like filming themselves for Instagram. And there was another guy behind them that was like filming them for something else. And so I was kind of pretending because I don't really want to video these guys, but I had a phone out. I was like acting like I was filming them, like the classic postmodern pastiche. And I think that to some extent is healthy. Like you're kind of just making fun of the whole sequence. Like you can't come to this public event and not expect public notice.
Right.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
screw
it's
them,
crazy.
whatever.
So that's the latest on that, people. Stay tuned. I think Maud has a court date in August, I want to say. So this is July, yeah, in
Keep
August.
an
So
eye
we'll
out.
see
I
what
might
happens from
show up to support her. I actually told Tam that I would come hang out with her the next time I was in New York. So I could see her. I could see her and
Tam
Maud.
wasn't at the meeting yesterday. She must have been busy.
Yeah, no, she's been doing a bunch of different things, but she's normally a meeting attendee.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's there on a regular basis.
Does she have
Yeah.
like a kid with her?
Now they usually don't bring their kids. The last
That's
month was the first time they brought kids.
I mean, I one thing I'd be curious about is like what the actual number of like surgery getting trans kids, even in New York, is that would be
Oh,
affected by any
you
of
don't
this.
even have to go surgery. Well, of course, it's not perfect because you self-identify, but you can look up the number because if they track it if you want to. You can say male, female, do not want to say non-binary. It's infamous. It's smaller than you would even think it is. Like we already know it's small. It's shockingly small. Now, granted,
It's not.
some people may be in that category and not choose it, but of the people who chose it, it's something crazy. Like out of a million kids, I don't want to be way off, but it's really low. 100 something.
Yeah,
It's probably less than 100.
that's not surprising at all. I mean, like there's a huge difference between people that like in a Teen Vogue survey about, youth development of gender identity or something will say, I sometimes feel this way. Like 40% of women are bisexual and that kind of data gathering that starts pretty early on. There's a difference between that and the number of people that actually like are ride or die for this personal identity and that are actually going to show up to like a New York or Chicago city public school, in opposite sex clothing and so on down the line. I'm not surprised by those numbers at all.
Right, but the
I
odd
will.
thing is they would argue, and some of them have said it, well, if it's such a small number, why are you making a big deal with this resolution? And we passed one resolution, right? I would argue that well, if the resolution was non-binding and it's such a small number, why are you hijacking a school board meeting 8 months in a row and impeding the education of kids, including the kids who identify as trans or non-binary, to yell at the wind? So the same argument could be made.
And not only that, of course, it can be made, but so like a couple points here. Like, first of all, even if there are 80 kids out of a million kids, and that breaks down to like how many schools are there? 32?
Oh, schools total, but you talking about the million kids, it's way more than that. We probably got about 30 K-8 in our district. So I don't know, 600 probably.
Okay, so 600. I mean, even so, like if one in every five schools has someone who is male by birth who wants to use the girls' locker room with like a fully functional penis, that's still crazy. Like that's 80 potential major suits against your school. So I mean that's why you're doing that. People draw up resolutions all the time. Like I trained as a lawyer by background.
But here's the problem with that. If you had 40 or 80 or 100, 1 in 5 or whatever your number was of people in
Mhm.
that identified as female, had penis, and want to use the girls' bathroom, the
Yeah.
current policy says they can. So still, why are they hijacking the board meeting? The board meeting,
Okay, so this is all
nobody's
bullshit.
stopping them from doing it.
Yeah, this is just all activist bullshit then. But I guess one important point that I do want to make here is like a lot of people will identify as something like bisexual or non-binary as a statement like I'm slightly different. Like, I'm not a normal upper middle class white or black kid from Cleveland, or I guess in New York it'd be like Brooklyn or something.
Right.
But the actual numbers of people that have like diagnosable gender dysphoria or something like that are tiny. Like, I mean, doing consulting here, I'm pretty familiar with the numbers from like Lexington and Louisville, and those are smaller cities than New York. But I
Mhm.
mean, like Louisville City, like 2 or 3 million, counting the
Yeah,
suburbs. It's the sense
it's
like
bigger than
12.
our district.
Yeah, but it's still like it's like 12 people. I mean, it's like the a lot of modern woke liberalism involves finding like the weirdest, most isolated things that a very few people and often very non-sympathetic people want to do or are associated with. Um Illegal immigration prior to the Biden administration in the North was kind of a cause like this. And then like really riding for them to show like you care, you're really empathic. We picked some weird shit this time. And like I feel bad for the kids that are caught up in this, but this is just another example of it where like the fight is over 80 guys in dresses in the entire New York City school system. My own policy, of course, would be that it doesn't matter how many there are, and obviously, like you said, no one wants them abused. Everyone wants proper mental health treatment for all kids and all that. But no, you just don't. You don't put any girls through the stress of having like some dude walking around the locker room. Like
Oh,
identity is not really all that
you
relevant.
want to consider what the other students think. What's wrong with you?
Well, this is actually so. I kind of almost made fun of this with some gender critical friends the other day because like the entire debate came down to two groups of people whining. But like there's a paper that looks at how gender critical feminists and trans people code their messages. And for both groups, the message was I am oppressed and I will be very victimized if you don't give me my way in this fight. And I found that a little annoying, honestly. Like I have a more male coded communication style, like out of the way. Like, does what you're saying make sense? But nonetheless, like if you're going to talk about emotions, if you're going to talk about who hurts, it seems like the people we'd consider most would be sort of like adult and teenage women in our own society. So yeah, like if one kid says, "Well, I feel like I'm a woman and I want to walk around naked in the girls' swimming locker room in a Harlem PS," and 100 girls say, "Well, no, we're Muslim or we're Latina." I mean, that not only is that gross in general, but it's totally forbidden in our culture. It seems like the 100 girls would outweigh the one male who identified as a woman. So, like, we're in a really weird moment when like grown men are saying, "No, no, I'm not going to stand up for the 100 girls." Like, this person is a member of a still more victimized group because they're a man that thinks they're a girl. But again, you're kind of just leapfrogging common sense to ride with like the weirdest identity you can find. And it's the same thing with almost all of this, like black criminals that get shot by cops and justified gun battles. I mean, like crazy homeless vagrants. Everyone cares about like their buddy from the church who's out of work for 6 months. It's really easy to care about that guy. But if you care about like Jose, who fought us in the Venezuelan army and snuck into this country and might have committed some crimes here, then you really care. You're showing you're better than everyone else, and there's a huge element of that.
Right, right. So I guess we'll close the chapter on that for now. Obviously, we're going to revisit it because I have madness every month. But I want to get to some politics and ask you how's Biden
I,
doing? The big guy.
I mean, like both of us are on kind of the center, right? Like, I know which way we're probably going to vote, which way we're betting. I mean, like, it's great for me. Like the whole thing with Biden, I want Biden to be just good enough that they keep him in the race. Like, they keep prodding his carcass over to the finish line. By the way, like, I don't really like Big Trump either. Like, there are all these allegations of like actual sexual harassment and abuse and like business fraud and all this other stuff. Like, I've already given my take on, aggression and morality on this show, but like, that's not good. Nobody wants their candidate to be charged with a bunch of fucking crimes. So, like, I feel like
Convicted, not just charged. Convicted.
they convicted of a bunch of crimes. People are acting like this is some like black men are going to vote for him because of this. Like, he's a felon now too. Bitch, I'm not a felon. Like, what? You think I am? What do you think this is?
Yep.
But I mean, like, anyway. But so I'm not a big fan of that either. But this stuff with Joe Biden, I mean, this is getting close to elder abuse. This press conference, I mean, clearly we both set up events, nothing at this level, but like he knew who he was going to call on. He knew what the questions were going to be. He still did like a C minus job.
You
And
mean
I'm
tonight?
comfortable with that. Yeah. I'm comfortable with that because it means they're going to keep him in the race.
Right.
Basically, like the issue right now for another week or two is will Biden stay or will Biden be taken out in favor of VP Harris or somebody else, like Gavin Newsom, something like that. And I'd rather see Biden run against Trump. I actually think if Newsom as the presidential candidate and Harris as the VP candidate ran against Trump, he'd get destroyed. Like, because Trump is not an excellent candidate either. Trump is in his late 70s. He's experiencing some speech issues. He's involved in all these court cases, which is why he's not campaigning. I mean, he has to be available for like video court, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So, it's a tough one.
Well, Biden, the thing about, obviously he's diminished how much we will see, but all the speculation is it's the people who have jumped so quick that's surprising. When you lose David Axelrod, I said, you got a problem. Clooney, I think yesterday said that he should jump out. So you're losing key people. Bill Maher's, jump ship. But also the problem I always saw was not just him being removed. And I don't hear a lot of people saying this, which is odd. I'm not that bright. Why haven't other people said this? It's not just whether he should run. It's that obviously your ego is power. You don't want to not run, and you don't want to go out saying I couldn't do it. So he wants to keep running. But I think the biggest pushback for him is that, because logically speaking, if he's not going to run because he's no longer competent, then you don't get to say Gavin or Kamala take the torch and run, but I'm going to keep the reins until January. If he's not competent, he needs to be out now. And that's really what his fight is I don't want to be out now, right? So how do we swing it that somebody else runs for the next term, but I stay to January without common sense, educated people saying, well, whoa, that's a problem. If you can't do the job 5 months from now, I don't want you doing the job now. So I felt that was odd. And then the second thing is leapfrogging Kamala to go to Gavin could be a problem.
Yeah, so I mean, I actually don't think it would be that difficult for Biden to say, "Look, the old Irishman's still fighting. I'm still here, but I don't know how much more time I have in me. I'm going to finish out this shift. Don't change horses in the middle of a stream. Like drop 50 cliches on him, and then just stay in the race or just stay in the seat.
Mm-hmm.
People know he's got a team around him until really the election's in November. The transition team is going to begin a week or two after that. Like, I think it's reasonable for him to say, okay, I'm going to do that. I actually don't think Biden's qualified to do the job right now. But I mean, the question really is how much that matters to some extent. Like, when you listen to people like the German chancellor accidentally dropped a bomb the other day when he said, we invited Biden over to, one of our hunting lodges in the Alps. This is during the G8 summit, and he couldn't come because he had to go to sleep or something like this. It was a really funny, embarrassing answer. But I mean, all this happened in 2022. So I mean, like, I think most people that have been watching on the right, when Trump started using that Sleepy Joe nickname, and you started seeing these Daily Wire videos pop up, this has been like a year and a half now. So I'm pretty sure like Jill Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Pete Buttigieg, like there's a whole team of people around Biden making sure he doesn't, until the debate, embarrass himself. And I'm pretty sure those people are going to keep things moving forward. Like they're not going to win any wars, but
Yes,
hopefully they
you're
won't
right.
start
But
any.
I know no one's going to say anything, but you're right. But that's a problem because we didn't elect
Oh, yeah.
them people to do the job.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's not going to be an apocalypse if you've got like Obama and Buttigieg and all these other people sitting around the Situation Room, like actually aware of what's going on. Even Jill
But then we're
Biden.
right back to Wilson again. He's not president.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, and I think, by the way, I think the stuff like this happens more often than we like to think. So, I mean, like looking back in history, we know that FDR couldn't walk and he was barely functional half the time. And his wife, who obviously is one of the greater figures in American public history, was doing at least half of his work. I mean, like JFK, we now know not only was having sex with 3 different women every day, but he was probably a speed freak. Like his back really hurt him. He was a war veteran. So like half the time he was pretty non-functional. And there were like these girls running around the White House giggling. And there were people like David Lemon, like the big PR and media guys at the time that were handling kind of how he was presented. And just on and on down the line. I mean, Reagan supposedly had Alzheimer's his last couple years in office. The only thing with all this is that prior to modern social media, we just didn't see it all the time.
Right.
So, like, when crazy stuff happened, like George Bush threw up on the Japanese prime minister, like, there aren't videos of it. It doesn't become this career ending thing. And Biden right now is on the verge of that. If I were him, I'd stick it out through this term. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't run again.
And if he doesn't run, who do you think they will pick?
Well, they're probably going to have to pick Harris. That's the problem. And then you have to settle on a VP. And Harris is kind of why you don't do diversity hiring, right? Like everyone's gotten a bit into the whole DEI conversation recently. But the thing with Kamala Harris is that she was very openly picked because she was a black woman. Like, we said that Joe Biden on the record. We both made fun of it at the time. Kamala Harris was polling at 1.79%. She got out of that presidential race before she got to her state of California, right? So, I mean, like, she was not an extremely qualified candidate. This wasn't like Carol Swain or even like Shirley Chisholm on the left or someone had just jumped into the race who happened to be black. She was picked because she was the best black woman in that category. I think the closest you could come other than her was Tulsi Gabbard. So, they put her in there and nobody thought the president was going to die. It's not what you campaign on. So when it actually becomes a situation where you might need to use the vice president, it's kind of like having Dick Cheney in there or Dan Quayle in there. Like, what do you do? Like they're picked for their role. They're pretty useful, but they're not actually going to run, are they? So people are now faced with the choice between the dead guy and this sort of affirmative action candidate who is asked to take on that role. I personally would pick Harris over Biden. I don't think Harris is an especially good leader, but I mean, she's alive. She's a functional California senator, skilled prosecutor. Like, she could do a reasonable job in most of her negotiations if she was elected as president. So, I mean, to me, it's not that hard of a choice, but that's who they'd probably have to use. Otherwise, you're going to see just rage among black women. Like, and that's the loyal Democratic voting base. Like, you don't want to make like an Uncle Sam daddy joke, but like that's the group that gives 96% of the ballots to the Dems, every election season.
Right.
So we'll see.
Well, it seems like whoever is in the seat, they found a way to shift, at least try to shift the focus away from Biden, because it was all Trump sitting in court. Trump has to be in New York. Trump, 34 counts, Trump. And for the last 2 weeks, I don't think they said the word Trump. It's been all Biden. Well, now they found something. This ever popular, sinister, and evil Project 2025. Oh, they're going to end the democracy in a new way. And so everyone's been talking about that. Black Talk Radio. I mean, the BET Awards supposed to be about malt liquor and rap, but Taraji P had to interrupt the fun to talk about the dangers of Project 21. And Kamala Harris even made an appearance to let us know she in these streets. So
that was hilarious.
Oh, that was bad. So what do you think about this newfound focus on the left surrounding Project 2025?
Well, I mean, I think that stuff like this is usually bullshit, and this is no exception. So I actually I talked to one of the guys, Jay Daniels from Heritage today, and I mean we had a call, and he joined me on the radio. A good guy. We've talked before. I think he's been on our show. But I mean, like, if you actually like, I got a PDF of Project 2025 from him, and this is like a classic think tank document. Like, it's written as a counter to the liberal. Yeah, exactly. It's written as a counter to the liberal white papers that were designed for President Biden. It's 925 pages long. Let's see who signed on to this, because it's still on my desktop, slowing down my computer because it's so large. Okay, Mandate for Less Government Project 2025. Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. So who all signed on to this? Okay, this is about 100 different conservative organizations. This is on page XI. Alabama Policy Institute, Alliance Defending Freedom, American Compass, the American Conservative, America First Legal Foundation, American Main Street Initiative. This is everyone I should contact about plugging my book. Center for Immigration Studies, Center for Renewing America, Claremont Institute, Concerned Women for America, American Prospect, Hillsdale College, just on and on down the line. All these perfectly normal groups, YAF, the Young Americas Foundation, Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, National Association of Scholars. I mean, these are all perfectly legitimate groups. National Association of Scholars is barely center right.
Would. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, this is a huge think tank manuscript that came out of Heritage, NAS, maybe some of the Claremont College guys or Claremont Institute guys
Mhm.
that talks about like literally everything. Like, I got into an online debate about pages 562 through 64, which are how overtime pay can be
Overtime,
handled
yeah.
by
Oh,
bosses. Yeah. So there's nothing particularly suspicious here. It's like the contract with America. It's like the liberal stuff. Hope, yes, we can. Whatever Barack Obama's package was called. But
mhm.
right now, the Democrats know they have to go up against Trump. They know their candidate's senile. So you're throwing in everything but the kitchen sink, and that's why you're seeing these claims like Trump is abusing children and all this kind of stuff. It's just like Brett Kavanaugh, like he's getting in fights on boats. People.
Okay. So what I want to say though is I saw some of the stuff about it. I mean, I didn't read 900 paper. I saw some bullet points. Some I agree with. There were a
Mhm.
few things I didn't. The things I didn't agree with, it wasn't the end of the world. It's just suggestions, all that kind of stuff being true. But the thing that I want to ask you about that I thought that I mean it's just my opinion when I started to hear people talk about it. I don't know if it was the intent, but I just thought that the left is so good at framing a narrative and the right is always a bit behind. I thought that doing this is smart from the sense of I think it goes to the point, it's every topic basically. It's suggestions, it's game plan, it's people that you can put in place. So you can hand it to a president and say, hey, you're looking for a guy for a policy issue, find that policy issue. We got
Absolutely.
people there, all that stuff is fine. But it seems that while they were floundering and they had nowhere to go to, their one fight was always abortion, but they've already shot that arrow already. That they really didn't have anything to really stick, sink their teeth into and attack you on. And you just offered up something for them to complain about. While yes, they're lying and they're saying it says things that it doesn't, they would do that anyway. But because they're going to tell you they're going to be even more apt to do it because it's 900 pages and they know no one's going to read it. So isn't it odd? Don't you think that, you know, making it public and putting the GOP on the fence and having all these interviews and having the nominee and former President Trump saying, I don't even know what this is and disavow it. And then the president of Heritage have to go on. He's on Will Kane and talking about why he did it. Isn't that kind of like not the best move politically?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, so like every incoming administration has had a document like this. I mean, from Hope and Change, whatever Yes We Can was actually called, to the blueprint for the Reagan Revolution, to the contract with America. This is absolutely conventional stuff. I mean, like, yeah, you know that the Democrats are going to come after it and lie, just like the Republicans always do. I mean, I remember, before the current, it's important to think about how people were treated before the current polarized moment,
Right.
because right now there are people on the left and even on the right that I would agree are legitimately kind of dangerous.
Mhm.
Like the 1619 project, that's legitimate crap. Like, and I'm not comparing these two, but like Nick Fuentes, is even more to the extreme than that on the right. Like there are crazy people, but the same kind of language was used back in like 2012 when it was like Obama and Mitt Romney shaking hands in Brooks Brothers suits. Remember?
Right.
Like people are calling Van Jones a dangerous maniac on the right. And on the left, it was much worse. I mean, people were saying that the milk toast Romney was like driving around with dogs
Oh,
on the
geez.
hood of his car, and he
And he
had
had
binders
binders of
full of,
women.
yeah, binders full of these broads. He's a sexist. I mean, like it's just so no matter what you do, you're going to be attacked by your rival. This is the big game. This is the Game of Thrones, literally the game of resolute desks. And so no, you can't not have your master plan ready. One thing that I was impressed by with Project 2025 actually was that there was a lot of the usual white paper BS, like this is our position on condom use for married couples. And like I'm actually way to the left of Project 2025. Like I'm pretty right wing. I'm as right wing as it could be when it comes to crime and illegal immigration and so on. But like with a lot of this other stuff, like I don't care. I don't care if you're gay. It's not my business. More women for the rest of us, whatever. So I looked through some of that. I was a little cynical about some of it. I was approving of some of it. I probably felt exactly like Trump did, with the sole exception that I'm from Chicago and he's from New York. So there's some Midwest renovation stuff I supported, so on. But like I know Trump in his heart of hearts is not hardcore pro-life. Anyway, but the thing that is extremely useful about Project 2025 is that Heritage and the rest of those boys did a great job of putting together a database of about 5,000 people that are right wing and center right that'll actually come in and staff up a Republican presidential administration. And like there's a whole website, it's project2025.org. You can apply through the website. The plan is on the site, although I got an even fuller version, just like on and on and on. And the reason that's so important is that the deep state is a real thing that affects all presidents and especially Republican. Like it's not some kind of conservative boogeyman myth. What the deep state is just the unelected portion of the government. So like when you are elected in an election year, you come into Washington and you're part of a fairly small group of new electeds, maybe 200 congressmen, senators, you're the president, you've got a VP, all that. And you make another maybe 5,000 appointments, not counting judges. You appoint the very head of each agency, every ambassador, the secretary. But under them, they're all the people that just applied for jobs or were recommended by their brother. So there's like the deputy assistant undersecretary. But that title, deputy assistant undersecretary, like we're going to be interviewing Jeremy Carl pretty soon. Like that's a boss. Like that would be the title of someone that runs like 10 national parks. So all of those people are people that just hold their jobs across administrations. As you know, I'm probably just lecturing
2
here.
million of
But
them.
like
2 million of them.
yeah, 2 point whatever million of them. That's the deep state. So like when you actually do business with the government at the level even you or I have, much less Trump has, you'll find yourself talking to SOBs that haven't just been there since Trump or since Mr. Obama before him, Mr. Bush before him, but since like Jimmy Carter. You'll find yourself talking to like a 56-year-old Caucasian guy, nothing wrong with that, but who's been in like the Department of, the Interior since 1980 and still has a very 1980s environmentalist viewpoint on what you can do with your own land. So that is what Trump's going to have to overcome. Anyway, long story short, the whole point of Project 2025 is that they're going to give him at least his 5,000 and then they're going to give him some hiring recommendations. So when he goes in, you've got your guys at the ready. And then if they're the deputy assistant undersecretary, toss enough smack, you fire him and you replace him. So you've got 5, you've got 10, whatever thousand Republicans that are tested leaders that can actually help run the government. And that was Trump's big problem the first time. Like he got in, and I mean, I think he and these guys all kind of stabbed each other on the back. It was a bad exercise in leadership, but he got in with good guys like Jeff Sessions, But then the question is, what happens? Like, okay, you're the president. Jeff Sessions is the attorney general, and you find that the AG's office won't even stop pursuing corruption charges against you, president. Well, what do you do about that? One thing you could do about that is kick out a lot of people and replace them with your hiring list. So I think that's a very useful tool.
I got it. We shall see, because obviously they're going to keep beating that drum as long as it works, and because people don't read it. I mean, the things I've heard people saying, it says it's fascinating that adults with some level of education would believe.
Well, it's becoming a right-wing meme, right? Like, people, Project 2025 mandates that you take your girlfriend out for dinner before you, I mean, like Project 2025 mandates you can smoke in fast food restaurants. Like, it's the idea is that almost anything you can imagine is just a good thing or a rule of gentlemanliness or a stupid bad thing is in Project 2025 because it's so damn long.
It's long enough.
Yeah. That actually is footnote 37 for the first one of those. But no, I think the basic idea is a good one. Like if you want, good Republicans is the phrase that comes to mind in there as a Republican elected official, you need to make a database of Republican high-level bureaucrats that you can hire. Right. I mean, I would probably, you'd have to be insane to hire me. I would talk exactly as I do now, but like, I would be willing to work in a Republican administration and like run some, I'd be willing to look over a couple of colleges. I'm sure Chris Rufo would, but you need that list of people.
No, I'm with that. I mean, I guess, I'm not a political operative. I just think that all that stuff is fine. I just wouldn't have given it to the Democrats. Because they even said, yeah, well, we gave it to Biden so he could use it if he wanted to. I mean, because we're nonpartisan. I know you're nonpartisan, but don't give those people this.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I'm not going to insult friends, but that was perhaps not a perfectly logical move. But I mean, it's also just like once you have the website, you can't not do it. Like, let's look up Biden's plan for, Biden plan.
Got to be before 4 p.m.
Well, that's his personal plan. Let's see what his election plan is.
Oh, okay.
Biden plan post 2024 election. Okay. Yeah, Joe Biden's top policy is a 2024 presidential election guide with links to the White House post-election plan. I mean, this is USA Today first result. Like, there's no real way you can run for president and not tell people what you're going to do.
Yes, but that's not Trump. That you just looked up Biden's plan. You can look up Trump's plan, but Trump's plan is not Project 2025.
Well, yeah, but Project 2025. I mean, the idea is that Trump would have it before he gets into office. And now, I
I
guess
get
the
that.
comment is you could just email
No,
it to
you're
Trump.
100%. I just don't think, or maybe it would have been delayed, but I don't think you get this. The world is ending from the left had it not been, you know,
Well, I think you do. I think
but
that once the left realized that they were running a dead man against, big Trump, who's no joke as a campaigner, I think they would have done pretty much anything.
that's true.
Like, we have an adult show, but I hesitated to say some of this on YouTube. But like, I'm sure you've seen these allegations that Trump is like sexually abusing kids. He was going to Jeff Epstein's island.
Yep.
Like, and I mean, this is all, in my opinion, because I think most rich adult males are capable of a lot of stuff that's pretty disturbing. But like, I think that that's almost all BS, rich at the Trump level, but that's almost all BS. Like the case that initially alleged that was brought by Katie Moss, I forget the exact title, but I read the legal reviews of this years ago, 2016, and was dropped because, as far as anyone could tell, the plaintiff just made it all up. So if you Google a falsified claims Trump child abuse case, you'll find like a Daily Mail front page headline from 2016 that says these allegations are not supported. They're almost entirely false. So I mean, it seems like what's happened, unless new information is leaked, is that people are going back into the Epstein case and back into these flight logs and just trying to dig up the craziest filth they can and saying, well, yeah, this is what this guy was doing. Our candidate's dead. Well, your candidate's almost dead and he's a rapist. And I don't think that's accurate. I think that anything is going to be used by these guys on both teams as you get within 3 months of a U.S. presidential election. That's my honest opinion.
Right. Now I want to talk SCOTUS briefly. Now,
Okay.
if you want to talk about any particular case, because some of them were pretty interesting, that's fine too. But the overriding thing I got from the responses, now I know people always, act like this to the end of the world, but what was odd to me is that the people, again, it's double speak of 1984. The people who are saying, who have for years been saying democracy dies in darkness, and they're saying democracy, and this is the end of democracy, and democracy needs to be defended. Like you talked about before, when you talked about the 2 million bureaucrats, the deep state. And I always get on the soapbox of the unelected bureaucrat. Like, we don't want people that we didn't elect. I just said that about Biden. My issue was I know there's people that are running office, but that's not what they were hired to do. But here, in many of the cases, whether you agree with the premise or the arguments that they made, in a lot of the cases, the familiar strain was the justices saying that the government agencies aren't the end all be all, that they can't just say, like you can't just say, let's just assume, give them the best intent of a policy that they write. Or we can't just say, well, they want to end it on this date and decide when to start the date of the 6-year time frame that you have to file a case. That even though the agency should be able to do, I remember when the Affordable Care Act came out, and my issue was, I read a lot. I didn't read it all, but I read a lot of it. And I'm like 50 pages in. And I said, what the biggest thing that I take from it? It's the number of times it says the secretary shall. Right? It's like Kathleen Sebelius was God. It was like, well, the secretary shall do this, and the secretary shall decide, and the secretary shall do this. Well, who elected her for something this complex and this big? So that's all, in many of the cases, the Supreme Court decided, and people are acting like it was all, we're losing our democracy because the people have more say.
Well, this whole we're losing our democracy thing is completely fake. I mean, I have friends that are in the U.S. military at pretty high officer levels. I have other buddies. The guy I train with, Brooks Crenshaw, I don't think you'd mind me using his name, is a former member of the Navy SEAL teams while he was on the technical side. And I mean, like universally, if you talk to someone who's a captain or a light bird colonel, or you talk to someone that was one of the special forces types, another buddy of mine, Daryl, has a similar background. I mean, what they'll say is, if the president gives a series of wildly illegal orders to do something like terminate a political opponent or invade Mexico, like we're not going to do it. And, the president might not be in office all that long, let's say. I mean, like there are a bunch of solutions beginning with invoking the 25th that you could use there. So this whole like we're going to lose our democracy shtick, January 6th, it's embarrassing riot, but that was in a year full of embarrassing riots on left and right. I mean, remember when the fucking mob took over the Capitol Hill district of Seattle and set up a city state? They
Oh,
called it Chaz and they
oh,
enforced
I
the
don't remember
borders.
that. That you
Yeah,
must be
funny
making that up.
funny advantage from the press real rapidly, but they shot 7 black men at the border. Guys are right, like the warlord Raz Simone's actually got communicated with a couple times online. Cool dude. This dreadlock brother riding around like 2 white chicks in a car, like an Armalite rifle in his hands. I mean, just straight up Somalia type stuff. But anyway, so that neither Chaz nor January 6th is going to lead to a collapse of the American order because soldiers and airmen in F-15s would start operating really quickly if that looked even possible. So the whole we're going to lose our democracy thing is just complete BS, utter nonsense. But in terms of the Supreme Court, the decision that they're reacting to, I'm in favor of the decision that ended Chevron deference. I think it's Leto Fisheries. I don't have the case in front of me,
Right.
but you described it really well, actually. Chevron deference was the idea that other power players, like mayors of mid-sized cities, courts below the Supreme Court, Congress usually, would defer to these executive administrative agencies in any situation where the agency was thought to have what's called reasonable competence.
Right.
What's an executive administrative agency, you ask? Ah, you sweet summer's child. Again, this is like the deep state. Like most of the government's not elected by anybody. So the large majority of the government today is these agencies that were set up 50 years ago by Congress voting under like Roosevelt or Kennedy. So you have Health and Human Services, you have all the police boys, the FBI, DEA, CIA, NSA, so on down the line. You have the EPA, which tells you that the puddle in your backyard is a wetland. Just so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. When those agencies come into conflict with almost anyone else, including an individual wealthy citizen or the powers I just described, the agency prevailed until now. So the whole case with the fisheries company involved one of the government agencies just deciding that they were going to charge a $700 daily tax on any boats you owned. Why? Because, well, they're allowed to do other things ancillary to the powers given them in this codicil of law or whatever the language was by the doctrine of Chevron deference. And what the Supreme Court says is no, this doesn't make sense. Like, you as an agency can't be given a 2-page bill that says the agency shall protect such animals as listed by Congress and then expand on a list of endangered animals every time a new species hits a certain threshold or whatever. That was another thing that was actually happening under the Endangered Species Act. And so radically change the law so that there are now 3,000, I think it is, endangered species or threatened species. And you can't build anything that could potentially harm the habitat of any of them. And a lot of people don't understand that these obscure little provisions, like the actual thing that I've described, are part of the reason that life is getting so unbelievably complicated. Why does it take 5 years to build a new building in Chicago or New York? Well, because first you have to do, a native lands assessment of the area where you're building. You have to do an ecological assessment of the area where you're building. Are there, if you're down by the water, any endangered species, any wetlands that are being threatened that could potentially be harmed?
Yeah.
Okay, now are you going to contract and use specifically union labor? Then are you able to pay this rate? If you're not, do you have an explanation for why you're doing that? I haven't been near any building project for a while, so I'm sure I'm a couple of years behind the times. But just all of that is something that takes place every single time you do anything. And what the court said is you have to trim it back by 30 or 40%. Congress has to write laws a little more specifically, like these are the endangered species, and then that's the law.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that one. What about the Fisher v. United States? I thought it was odd that they used Sarbanes-Oxley which is basically a financial law, to say that they interrupted proceedings, right? That was the J6 case where they're saying that they got additional charges because it's the felony and in interrupting an official proceeding, and they said Congress was there, so that's what they interrupted, and so it seemed like what they did was wrong and there were laws in place to punish them for what they did. It seemed like a way to, just like the Trump trial, not the one that SCOTUS voted on, but the trial in New York where he was found convicted of 34 counts of felonies, but what he did was easily a misdemeanor, and they changed the law to make it a felony by saying that, oh, there was a second crime he was using. He was using it to do this when there's really no evidence of that. So that's kind of what they were doing with the J6. It's like, okay, there's a statute for what you did, and we could charge you for that, but we want more, so let's bend the law in order to hold you for longer. And so I don't think you lose democracy because
No.
of that
That's exactly right. So, like, all of this stuff, I want to emphasize that you're playing technical legal word games. It's literally like me and you, or people at the exact same level that are on all sides of these debates. It's a bunch of people in blazers sitting around a table, figuring out exactly how certain words are structured and can be used in competitive conversation. Like, there's no outcome where someone just picks up a sword, cuts the Gordian knot in half, and is like, "Ha ha! There are no more laws." We've come a long way past that. So in this case, I actually pulled up some notes I had on this a while ago, and I've also honestly just got Wikipedia and LawWire open. But let's take a look.
which one is this,
Yeah.
Fisher?
So what happened in this case, the Supreme Court vacated the DC Circuit's ruling and remanded the case for further proceedings. But the important thing here, skipping down about a paragraph, Chief Justice Roberts wrote for the majority saying that in order to establish these things that go beyond disturbing the peace, like severe interference with an official proceeding, you have to prove certain things, like a defendant, quote unquote, impaired the availability or integrity of records, major documents, or other objects. Roberts wrote that a general phrase can be given a more focused meaning, blah, blah, blah. But basically, what they're saying is that you can't just charge people with anything. Again, a lot of it gets down to playing word games. Like, if someone disturbs the peace, there's a fist fight in the Capitol and they steal a podium, you can't charge them with felony interruption of an official praxis because the location where they're in is Congress. Was there a congressional hearing going on at the time? Did the individual person disrupt that hearing? So on, so on, so on. So this actually, and I'm kind of talking out my ass there. I don't know how this impacts each of 251 J6 cases, but
Right.
the core point is, yes, you can't read these broad, sweeping new crimes into this statute. And it's the same basic thing. Like, you can't take the law regarding the number of endangered animals that exist. That's a hypothetical example I was using, but also a real one that we've seen in practice in the US legal system. You can't just take that and say, well, as an agency, we're going to interpret the language of this statute to mean that we can keep adding animals to the statute or anything similar to that. What the courts are doing is clarifying like these technical turns of phrase, and I think mostly for the good. By the way, last point here, like when libs is the phrase that came to mind, but people on the left say, like, can you imagine a court on the left just making crap up, just like inventing rights or taking them away? Yes, I can. Like, you can support this or not, but like the right to gay marriage was not written into the Constitution by Thomas Jefferson. Like, the majority of rights that were found during a period, and even that phrase, what the hell, but that were found during a period of about 50 years by Thurgood Marshall, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so on, were essentially the result of just very high IQ judicial activism. I mean, whether you're talking about not just desegregation, which we all support, but busing, whether you're talking about abortion, whether you're talking about contraception for unmarried people, just on and on and on with all this stuff, whether you like it or not, sodomy, like there's a right to have gay anal sex in the Constitution. Like, Antonin Scalia openly laughed at that in one of his decisions. All of that comes from the idea that within the penumbras, quote unquote, of what's actually written, there must be additional rights in the document.
Mhm.
So the left did a more extreme version of this for decades, and everyone just kind of said, well, okay, that's the court. And
Right.
now you're seeing a fairly hysterical backlash to this. I can just notice it more because I'm on the right. And I'm pretty unsympathetic, honestly.
Right. Right. No, I think that's the case. I don't think anything uh changes the country. I mean, it changes things for the people involved in a couple of
Of
cases,
course.
but yeah, it's not, it's not the end of the. I don't think anything, whether you agree with it or not, giving more power back to the people and focusing more on the 10th Amendment than we have for 100 years is ever really a bad thing. I mean, you can always peel things back, and Congress can write laws, like you say, as a method to close some of these gaps. Like the J6 thing is different, but when you talk about the Chevron, right? When the agency is, their rules are ambiguous, the people who appointed them can just pass laws to make it clear. That's a simple thing. No one's stopping them from doing that. So, I mean, I think it's an overreaction. They do it every year. And I just thought it was interesting that, and I guess it's sad, but it's the way we go from a civic standpoint that so few people understand. So you hear a lot of people parroting, yeah, look at all how the Supreme Court is weakening the nation. Now you can agree with the decisions or not, but it's not weakening the nation by giving people more power, by taking away power from people who weren't elected to have it, because Congress has been abdicating their responsibility for so long that we're just so used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty fair. The only real complaint about the ending of Chevron deference is that going forward will be impossible, actually, because Congress has been out of the business for writing laws for so long that there are so many intra-agency statutes now that are hundreds of pages long that have been mostly written by the agency. I don't know whether they're up for review now or not. You'd imagine some of them are. And like going forward, you'd have to have knowledge of all the additions that the agency has made to the first like 8-page draft of the law in the past 30 years. So you could argue that instead of law being interpreted by unelected competent professionals, i.e., like upper bureaucrats, it's going to be interpreted by unelected incompetent professionals, like judges on the bench after a couple scotches. And I mean, that's pretty cynical, but there's a good chance that that will happen. Like that
Yeah.
AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene aren't going to put aside their differences and sit down and put on reading glasses and really go through the 400 or whatever pages the Endangered Species Act now stretches over. So we'll have to see what happens with that one.
Yeah, but I was going to move on to the last thing and then we'll end. But then you mentioned that, I got to ask you something about that. What about AOC calling to impeach the Supreme Court justices?
Just very briefly, that's completely non-serious. The Thomas thing, all of these things are just made up fake scandals, in my opinion. And although I'm on the right, I definitely I didn't say that about the potential Trump child abuse scandal, even though I think it's probably bullshit. There are things that would be serious if they were real. I mean, they're obviously real political scandals. The Hunter Biden scandal was real. This sort of stuff, the basic claim is that Thomas and I think Alito took some gifts from people that weren't directly involved in cases that they were hearing. Alito also flew a flag upside down outside his house, and there's sort of a half-assed attempt to tie this into their voting patterns. No, again, a lot of what I see from the left right now is complete shattering of traditional norms, combined with this frantic screaming that they're only doing this to preserve democracy. So, like AOC, why are you trying to indict a sitting Supreme Court justice of all living creatures? Nation that must be saved by, I mean, like these are the people that are screwing up the system that we have in place, and I mean it's important to keep that in mind. But yeah, I don't think much of that. I don't. Yeah, it's just BS.
Yeah. Last thing, I
All
was
right.
trying to ignore the story for so long, but I was going through your feed and I noticed you comment on it, and I got what you were saying and it made sense. But
Okay.
it was a picture of the hot girl and some other women, and it's like was something like the meme said something about girls
Which
think
one do
this is
you
what
want?
guys want, but they really want this family or whatever. And your point was like, you do realize that in real life that's all one girl. But here's my naive thing. You can talk about the point of that, which made sense. But I've seen the picture, I've seen them troll her out to country
Ooh.
concerts and all that. What was the context of when she did that?
Yeah, I mean, so like, first of all, just my comment there. For a chubby writer, have been for whatever reason lucky enough to have a range of romantic and personal experiences. I like women. It's for whatever reason I'm glad they don't hate me, Charles. I mean, you're a man with kids yourself. Women, from what I've seen, don't despise you.
They don't
Like the
decide.
idea that there is a distinction between someone bluntly liking to give head to their man sometimes and like wanting children. No, though that is not the whole virgin whore thing is not only sexist, it's stupid for you as a man. Like, if you think there's a distinction between women that like sexuality and wives, you're going to be in for a lot of unhappiness later in life, young brother. So, I mean, I think that's a point that I wanted to make because you
Right,
saw
but
all these guys.
yeah, and it makes sense, right? Yeah, because the people were attacked. But that's my what I didn't get. Because I didn't know the context of what how she became famous or what she said. I saw it was like a man on the street thing. So I didn't
Yeah,
understand why they assumed that so now the meme is like that is her. That's all she does. Like she doesn't work, she doesn't go to college, she just walks around having oral sex.
blowjobs to people. Yeah, no, I mean the Hawk Tuah girl. I don't follow the Hawk Tuah girl online.
It's
But
just
what, like what, 40-year-old man? But like as I understand, the Hawk Tuah girl is a manager at a spring factory somewhere down there in the country.
Mhm.
And the reason she was in Nashville, which is, I mean, definitely a place where you're going to see a lot of drunk women, many of whom happen to be Caucasian, many of whom have hats. The reason she was there was like a friend's big party or something. And a guy came up to her. If you've ever been to the Nashville Strip, it's smaller than Chicago or New York's Club District, but it's like 8 blocks of just country bars.
Bars, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, Kid Rock, like a 14-foot animatronic Kid Rock dancing shirtless, like it's that type of place. And so on this legendary party strip, this guy comes up to her and's like, "So what's a move that guys like if you're trying to get sexual?" And the girl's like, her friend covers her face, it's like, and the other girl's like, "You got to give it that hot too. Sometimes you got to spit on that thing," and
Mhm.
then just walks off because it's a street interviewer in downtown
Right.
Nashville. And that's it. That's the whole story. The guy turned out to have several 100,000 social media followers. He put that online. It went viral. And the young woman just went on with her life. Like she knows it's her. Her Instagram's up to 1 million people. She said she's not going to do OnlyFans or anything. She has a boyfriend who looks very happy in most pictures of the two. And it's just that the idea that you want a girlfriend that doesn't like blowjobs is just an example of kind of the stupid virtue signaling that you get on the right sometimes. Where like guys, like there's that other picture of those women dancing. It was like a mostly
Oh, right,
white
right,
group.
right, right.
Yeah, they were like a competitive dance team. They were all like just to me good average dancers. None of them were anything
50
really
million
exceptional.
views.
Yeah, but it got like all these views, and then like the men's rights guys started in on it. And were like, "Would you want to marry one of those whores?" And it's like, would I want to marry someone who is a D1 athlete in the sport of dance, who is dancing at a dance event? Like, yeah, I could see a lot of upsides to that
And
actually.
then the race stuff was like, oh, that missed out on that black influence.
Dancing to that Negro music, because Southern working class girls definitely all they did was sit around and pray before the blacks got involved. I mean, it's just all complete nonsense. No, I've said these are basically the same woman. Like the woman in picture two looks like a Southern ex-party girl that had 3 kids. It's like a brunette, I think one tattoo. She's holding a kid. She doesn't look old enough to have three
Just
kids.
like you can't assume the girl on the street is all she does is sex and she has no life. You can't assume that the wholesome wife in the other picture is a former party girl.
Well, like you can generally assume that like 25-year-old women who have 3 kids and a couple tats and like seem to really a very pleased man, like looking at the picture, probably have certain background characteristics. And that's not mocking women. I don't see anything wrong with drinking or having sex with your partner. So I mean, the whole thing just struck me as stupid. And you're starting to see more of this virtue signaling on the right. And it's weird in terms of what it contrasts with. So, like a week before this, and I'm not at all like a racial complainer, but like a week before this, another girl went viral basically for saying nigga in a video. And this
Is
person
that the
became
cooking
like
one?
a
She
kind
was
of,
like cooking or something?
yeah, nigga. And like this became like a sort of a dissident right superstar. Like she went to America First PAC.
Mhm.
Like, look, we working class white kids are bold enough to say any word. And this person got the same number of followers as the Hawk Tuah girl did. So I mean, if you're gonna celebrate something like partying and then saying, I'm gonna go home, hang out with my man, seems a lot happier than like trading racial insults online, honestly. So if you're gonna pick one of these people, I'd say go with Hawk Tuah for the young gents. But in reality, there is no one person. There's not one woman that used an insult once in her life, and then another woman that gives blowjobs, and then another woman that's a wife. These are all just people, often the same person. So that was the point of the post.
No, and the post, and I agree with that, and it made sense. I just wanted to bring that up. I think that brings us to the end. By the book, Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me. Check it out. See, we can talk without, a guest or a book and all those kind of things. It's always good to catch up with you, and we will see you next week where we will have a guest or two. Well,
Sounds
thanks,
good,
and
bro.
we'll talk to you next week.
Land of the free and a home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to save, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving the day.